Okay, so I'm so excited to be going over today's presentation. So what I'm going to be presenting is how to manage your time like a pro. And this is such an interesting topic because right now with the remote working, managing your time is even more complex. Traditionally, you would be in home for the morning and then you would go to work for a block of time and then you would have your home in the evening. But when you're remote working, everything starts working in with each other. Your home time impedes on your work time, and your work time flows over into your home time. And so being able to manage this is critical to staying successful and keeping your business moving. And especially when you have a demanding job, your work can then leach into all areas of your life. So managing your time like a pro is going to be an awesome conversation for you to really think about after I'm done with this presentation. Okay, to give you a little background of who I am and what company I work with and how I've learned how to do these things is I am the COO of DecorWorks. So DecorWorks is a Southern Utah-based company, but we are national. So we work on very large projects. We do the interior of spaces for businesses, for organizations across the whole United States. So what we do is we have a job that comes through in just a concept form, and then we design it, engineer it, manufacture it, and install it. So we'll have jobs that are from $20,000 all the way to $1.5 million. So if you can imagine how many complexities and how many moving parts goes into a single job that's $1.5 million of just decor and design, it can get pretty crazy. So at a very young age, I was introduced to this world of all of these moving parts. And so I was able to learn how to manage the time and how to get the rest of your team managing their time as well. Which leads me into what I'm going to be talking about today is you have your personal life, right? Like you have all of those things that you're doing at home that are very demanding and you want to give time to your family, but you also have the responsibility of looking out for your team and helping them work on the right things at the right time, and everyone needs to be going in the same direction. And then you've got your company and how they're managing their time and how efficient are you being with your company and how active are you moving on these different projects that will make a difference. And so if you're able, it's like all of these things are linked together. If you're able to have good time management at home, your success to have it with your team and your family is incredibly higher. And it goes the other way. If you're having great time management at work and your company's managing its time well, then that's going to flow over into your personal life. And so these three components are very connected together because they're all influencing each other. And the principles that I'm going to talk about will work for all three areas. Okay, so I get this question all the time, is how do you balance everything? How do you balance your time and your family and your work and all of that? And this phrase that I have actually really loved as I've been going through things more and more is life is more about harmony than balance, especially when you're remote working. So many times you'll be very absorbed into one area for a period of time because either say it's work, you've got a deadline, you've got a lot of projects that you're moving through. It will make a huge difference in your company if you can just engage long enough to push it through. So you could be working late every single night. But then the next week you're saying, I really kicked butt last week. In the evenings, I'm going to choose to go home at the normal time and I'm going to really engage with my family. And the weekend, maybe I take a 3-day weekend and then you take some more time. And so what I have found is it's more of the harmony over several weeks or a month that makes a difference. The balancing every day or every week can make my time management go out the window because what it's doing is I'm not dedicating the right amount of time to the area that I need to. with the place that I was at. Okay, so if we go back to the 3 components, you have your personal component, you have your team component, and you have your company component. In this first component, which is your personal, I have 2 main tips. The first tip is keep a note about everything. If someone is wanting you to research something, you open up it can be a traditional notebook. I use a Mac, and so it has a built-in notebook, which is fantastic. If someone's asked me to look into something, I start writing down all my thoughts, and everything that I find that I research goes into that note. But then I also think, okay, I've got to have meals this week. I've got a meal plan. So I have a meal plan notebook. Anything that goes in that's a part of my life has a note in my notebook. And I'm very particular that if I'm in a conversation that I'm writing things down, because especially when you're busy and things are blending into each other, it's very easy to lose thoughts or ideas or what people were asking of you. And so this is where my notebook is huge. I have almost 900 notes of all various topics, so that when I engage in that project, all I have to do is open up that note, and then I have all of the information that I have prepared in the past, that I've had conversations on. And so what this does is it makes it to where you're more efficient. You're able to engage in more projects throughout the week, because you would have been already doing portions of that project and thinking it through in a previous time. Okay, the next part, which is probably one of the most important parts, is being very intentional with your schedule. And what I mean by being intentional with your schedule is you have a system to where you're logging everything. So you know what's coming up in that day. You know what's coming up in the week, and you know what's coming up next week. How I do mine is I have the 3 things that I'm really focusing on. So at work, I have 3 areas, and I'm saying, okay, this is my main focus. If things are coming outside of this focus, I've really got to consider the priority with it. Underneath that focus area is where I put this week's date. So if it's the week of May 10th to May 15th, then I will have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I start to build out my schedule on every single day. I still keep my calendar, but what this is I have a check mark box to say, okay, did I accomplish these things? Underneath this week's schedule, I have a queue. And a queue is if someone asks me a question, needs me to do something, sends me an email, I get an idea, anything that I need to accomplish within the next couple weeks, I put in my queue. Because as I'm intentional about my schedule, and at the beginning of the week when I go to plan it, I take things out of my queue and I place them in a day with a time. And what that does is it helps me look at all of the things that I have going on. And then it helps me group like items. So if I have a lot of people that are asking a similar question of me, or I have projects that are all circling around the same topic or the same skill set, I'll try to pull all of those together in one afternoon. Because instead of having all of the switching costs from going from one activity to the next, I can group it to where I can still stay engaged with that same part of my brain. So one of the more important things when I'm doing my schedule is that every day I identify a highlight item. What this highlight item means is this is one of the most important things that I need to make sure I do today. And I put a little asterisk by it. So if it's something at home, like I need to make sure to renew my passport, or I need to help my daughter with her homework, like it's due, that I have an asterisk by it, because then I make sure that everything else that I build time around that one activity. If it's something at work, like I need to accomplish this project, then what I do is I make sure I say, okay, I need 4 hours, and all of these other things that are in my queue, or all of the other things that are building up in my day, I'm just going to have to move, because this item right here is my most important thing for the day. This will make the biggest difference for all of the projects that I'm working on in the future. Okay.
to do a recap on what my schedule looks like, as I'll quickly go through it here.
So what I do is I have this week, I have my queue, and then I have my next couple weeks all built out. And what this is as I'm scheduling meetings, as I'm bringing in big projects, I start filling out my next couple weeks because then I can see my capacity. I also keep a record of everything that I've done before. So once I've completed a week, I just cut it and then I paste it down below everything. So when in the future I'm doing a search and I type in a keyword, it will still find it in my schedule, and I can either remember when I worked on something or I can remember what it was. But this helps me keep a record of everything that I have done. All right, so out of the three components, you have your personal, your team, and your company. So within your team, there's two really important principles that I find wildly accessible, especially when we're remote working. So the first one is you have agendas for everything, and then the second one is you have communication-specific meetings. So what I don't want to do on this first one is go in too deep because I could talk forever about how we set up our meetings. But we have a couple different meetings. We have our weekly meetings, we have innovation meetings, and then we have same page meetings. Our weekly meetings and our same page meetings, we have taken the agendas from the book Traction. It's the EOS system, so the Entrepreneur Operating System. And what this is every week, with those two meetings, people have a dedicated time and day that they meet. So every department knows that they meet on a specific day and time. And for your same page, which is a team member and their supervisor, is they meet at the same time every week or every other week. What this does is people understand the agenda because it's the same week to week, like nothing changes, but people come prepared. So with our team meetings, the bulk of the meeting is called our IDS session. So our IDS session is when we go over all of the issues. We identify, we discuss, and we solve. And what this is throughout the week, people start preparing what the issues are that are going on, and they start entering it into our meeting agenda. Because things will come up throughout the week, but when you go to meet, you often forget what happened or what projects you were dealing with. And so people will start to populate it for several days in advance. And then when we get to the meeting time, when it comes to that portion, is then we dive in and we say, okay, these are the top 3 most important things that we deal with first. So we don't make a list of 100 things that we're going to go over. We pick 3. And if we're able to accomplish those 3, then we have the next 3 on the docket. Very rarely do we get past 6 things, because if we're really solving it, we're getting down to the root of that issue. So what this does with time management is this helps that everyone's prepared beforehand. We maximize the time that we're meeting as a team, and then at the very end is when everyone gets assigned their to-dos. So say we had an issue with one of our installs. Something went wrong. Well, our install director, he would take a portion. Maybe there was a sales part that went wrong, so our sales director would take a portion. And maybe something went wrong in manufacturing, so they would take a portion, to where they're all coming up, or they're bringing together the solutions that they were assigned. And so this makes it to where not everything has to be done in the meeting, but you've solved it in the meeting. Now everyone has the to-dos that they need to do. And then the next week within the schedule is you recap. Okay, did you get your to-do done? Did you follow through on that commitment that you made? And so instead of the director or the leaders having to follow through all throughout the week, is this just scheduled in the meeting? This really helps with time management because it groups things together. People know what to come prepared for, they know what they're reporting, and they really know how to center their information. With the same page meetings, it's the same thing. You know that you're meeting at a certain time on a certain day. And so if you have personal things that you need to talk with your supervisor about, you do it here. If you have issues with something, a system, a person, a customer, whatever, you bring it to this meeting where you can have a one-on-one conversation. because you do the same thing. You identify, discuss, and you solve it. So instead of the leader having to solve a whole variety of things throughout the day, is they wait until they have the same page. If it can wait, they wait, and then they try to combine it all at once. And this gives both of the team members ample time to think it through and then come together for a solution. So the third meeting that we have are innovation meetings, and these ones are my favorite. Okay, these ones we use a lot of Post-it notes. And I won't go into this whole structure because, again, this could be a whole meeting in itself. But we have gotten some of our ideas for this meeting from the book Sprint. And it's written by a couple of gentlemen who worked at Google Ventures. So it's very interactive. But what we do at this meeting is we say, okay, if we're successful with this project, what does that look like in 6 months? Or what does that look like in 2 years? And we start writing down everything on Post-it notes. Generally, in meetings, you spend a lot of time spinning, or the loudest person consumes the meeting because they have the most to say and they feel very comfortable vocalizing their ideas. So we try to get as much out on Post-it notes before people start talking across the room. One of the most helpful things with this meeting is we do what we call how might we. So when we're coming up with a solution, everyone is writing all of the solutions they have down on Post-it notes. So one person could have 15 solutions, another person could have 2 solutions. And then we heat map it. So if you're doing it online, there's online programs for it, or if you're doing it in person, then you use stickers. So if you're doing an online version, is you can use Excel sheets, you can use a form of Google Docs or Google Forms, because you're voting, is that everyone goes through and picks the 2 or 3 ideas that they like most. So instead of one person talking about one idea for 30 minutes and absorbing a lot of time, is now you have a variety of ideas. You could have 50 ideas up there and you sort through them very quickly because the top contestants all rise to the top. And this is extremely helpful when you're trying to manage time, because you have now taken an 8-hour meeting and you have put it into 2 hours or 1 hour, depending on how efficient your team is or how much you're innovating. So there's little things like that when you're holding meetings with your team, is that they know what to expect and you're getting all of the ideas out there, and then having a very efficient voting system to then move it through so that you just don't go into the spin cycle that you can find yourself into in meetings. Okay, meeting that we have is, we call them lightning rounds. And what this is this is a communication meeting. Is every morning, all of the directors and the managers and our salespeople call into the same meeting. So we have some people that are still working at the office and we have some people that are remote. And they all get together in this meeting, and there's a very specific agenda that they go around the room. Every director talks about the projects that are within their court that will be happening that day. And they have questions. So they'll ask the salespeople, hey, this job is supposed to be completed today or tomorrow. What information do you have? Or, I'm supposed to be completing this job in 3 days, but I still don't have any information, so it won't be done. And what this is they now have a chance to talk about the highest level issues that could turn into huge problems later on. And everyone just dives into it in the morning. We try to keep these between 30 and 45 minutes. What that is it's long enough for people to get in and help solve some of the issues, but it's not too long that it takes a majority of the morning. These have proven to really help us move the projects through and close up some of the communication gaps that you can have when you're a custom design shop like us. The other thing are those that are working remote is they check in with their leaders every morning. They look over what their to-do list is, and they have estimating times that will take them to do certain projects. And then at the end of the day, the leader calls in and they said, okay, where are you with these items that you were going to get done, and how long did it actually take you? So you don't call a couple days later and be surprised on what they have done. Is you're checking every day, because it really enhances the accountability, because the team member that's reporting understands someone's going to be checking in on this work that I need to be doing. And it helps them manage their time better so that they don't get sucked into other things that they could be doing remotely. And as the team member, if you're working remotely, it helps you prioritize and say, I've got to really have a non-disturbed time in this morning because I have these things that are going to take my full brain power. So I've got to make sure I clear out my distractions. So again, with the team member is you have agenda. With the teams, you have agendas and you have communication meetings. Within the 3 components, the third component is the company. And I have 2 principles for this one. The first principle is you assign a champion. The second principle is you have accountability with that champion. So assigning a champion is very important in that you understand what everyone's bandwidth is. You understand that the strengths that they have. So that when you say, hey, I need you to take this project, they have the capacity to do so. So an analogy that works well with this is, you've heard it, if someone is in a restaurant and someone is needing an ambulance, instead of just calling out and saying, I need an ambulance, someone help me, you point to a person and you say, you call the ambulance. The response rate that one person is going to have is dramatically higher than just waiting for someone in a crowd. So with your company, if you just have projects going on and you're just calling out and saying, we've got to work on this project, the likelihood of it happening is much slimmer than if you were to say, okay, you champion this project here, except you'd say that way nicer. But what it does is it gives the person the ownership to do something, to own it, and to really think it through. They'll start managing the time on that project way better than what you can manage their time. So to help us with this is we use a system called Smartsheet. And this is a paid one, but Smartsheet is great in that you can keep all of your things organized. So we have several different smart sheets. We have smart sheets for jobs. We have smart sheets for initiatives. We have smart sheets for internal marketing projects, but all of the information is the same. Within one area, we have, okay, what's the status? We have what the project is that you're working on. We have the task name. And most importantly, we have who it's assigned to and what the due date is. Within here, this helps that person who's over the project know, I am owning this project or I'm owning this component. My name is assigned here. And everybody knows that this is mine that I'm really going to try to figure out. How this helps with time management is, as a leader, if you're telling a person what they need to do every single step and you're micromanaging it because they're not the full owner of it or they're not understanding that they're championing it, you're going to spend a lot of extra time in the work. You're going to spend a lot of time just helping move the project forward, and you won't be able to do any of the other things that are on your plate very well. And so when you are managing your time well and you're helping assign as a champion to the project, the whole company all of a sudden starts moving a little bit smoother because people are taking the initiative to then figure out and solve. And if they're managing their time well, then it just compounds on each other. A big component of when you have a champion is that you hold them accountable. You say, here's your priorities that you need to do. Here's how it relates to all of the other work you have on your plate. And here's the goal. And you check in with them at a scheduled time so they know if you're checking in on every same page, if you're sending a separate email that you need a status update, but it's regular. So it's not like, okay, you're not checking in with me, I'm off the hook. No, you're not off the hook. Your name is on this project and this is the due date. And as the leader, you really follow through. So Smartsheet for us is where we can keep a ton of information so that the leader doesn't have to remember all of the specifics of the project that they're then giving to someone. So we've talked about 3 areas. We've talked about your personal area, and within your personal area, you keep a note for everything and you're very intentional on your schedule. We've talked about your team component and you have an agenda for everything. And you have communication meetings. And for your company, the third component is that you have assigned champions and you hold them accountable. Now, this isn't the full picture, But when you're working remote, things can be going so fast and you can have so many distractions that if you really boil it down to those 6 elements, managing your time becomes so much easier and so much more attainable. So there's many things in here that you can read, and I will put the resources here on books that we've read and that we have found helpful, either personal, team, or company-wise. So ask as many questions as you can, and I will answer them. Okay, thank you.